Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back for Creative Corner, an ArtistPro special, the first guest, and I couldn't think of anyone more fitting perhaps to actually have here than Mr. Nik Cherwink. Many people in this room, I was about to say building, in this room, know Nik Cherwink through personal experience. I've known him for a good amount of time now as an educator and now as a life coach, but I'll let him introduce that as we move forward. But for now, please welcome Nik Cherwink, everyone, with your muted claps. Yay, yay.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, Nik, where are you coming from today?
Today, I am in San Diego, my new home as of about a week and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very stoked to be back. I went to college here many years ago and have always had a very special place in my heart. I've always seen myself coming back here and ending up back here. So it's pretty rad to have finally been able to make that happen.
Good. And what prompted that move? Because you were in LA for a little bit, then Orange County, and then you just kept making your way south. Are you going to go to Mexico next? What's going on here?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think I always knew I would come back. It was about 3 years ago when I was living in LA. I think I had visited San Diego and just had a great weekend. And something happened that weekend where I just really started feeling the calling to come back. And it was right around the time that I had been in LA for about 10 years. So I think also being in LA for 10 years, for like a whole decade, it was just a feeling of just like, hey, this chapter might be coming to a close. Like you came here to do your thing. You had your mission to get into the music business and kind of go on this adventure, which you did. And now what's next? What's calling you, right? I got to really spend pretty much my entire 20s working in the music industry and had so much fun doing that. And then kind of looking forward into my 30s, what I want my 30s to be like. And it just felt like, I had kind of done my time in LA, and San Diego is just awesome.
Yes, it is. For anyone who's not spent time in San Diego, just smell the air, look at the sea, and man, I mean, sometimes it's enough to keep me for that 2-hour drive alone. You touched upon it briefly, but for those who may not be familiar, you have a tenure in the music business. Can you just give us a quick Cliff Notes version of where you kind of bounced around and how that ultimately led you to Icon, which we'll pick up from there?
Yeah. So I went to college down here in San Diego and got an economics degree. I was really not into any of it, was not into any of the traditional majors that school was offering. So I was like, whatever, I'll just sort of get this like business degree. And it was really my friend's dad, like as I was graduating, pointed out like, hey man, you really love music. Like that's your passion. Now you've got this business degree. Why don't you put those two things together and go work in the music business? And there's just this light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, wow, like probably like my, first week after graduating college. So I just said, yeah, that's a great idea. Fuck it. Packed my bags, moved to LA, like didn't know anybody, like had nothing, had one friend in town, had like $1,000 in my bank account, and just totally went for it. And somehow hustled my way into Capitol Records, just kind of met the right person at the right time, made a great impression on them. And they hired me as an assistant. So my career really started at Capitol, and it was fun. They had just signed Katy Perry. My boss was the one that pretty much discovered Katy Perry. And so it was right as she was blowing up. Worked with some amazing artists over there. We had Snoop Dogg for a minute, 30 Seconds to Mars. Really fun, really fun time, really fun chapter. Learned a lot about the music business. I was specifically working in PR, doing publicity. And from there, though, I really fell in love with dance music. This was like 2009, 2010, like right before dance music really exploded. But also while I was working at Capitol, they were a UK based company. The parent company was an English company. So they actually were way ahead of the curve on the electronic music scene. So they signed David Guetta, they signed Swedish House Mafia. And this was before anybody knew who the hell those guys were. Yeah. And I was going to raves every weekend, like just pumping, just like totally soaking up the amazing LA rave culture. So any electronic act that came through, I was just like the first to volunteer and just pour myself into it. And really then realized like, hey, this is what I love. Like this is the part of the music industry that I love. Found an opportunity for myself to get into management, worked with the guys that throw a party in LA called Control. It's been a weekly Friday night party at Avalon in Hollywood for many, many years. So started working with those guys. That got into management. Management was really what I wanted to do. From there, kind of reconnected with some other contacts that opened up the door for me to start working with the manager from the Black Eyed Peas. and they had a relationship with Insomniac. So Insomniac was basically trying to start like a management company, and we partnered with them on that. That never really took off, but they had this thing called the Discovery Project. So that was kind of like what I came in for, was to help launch the Discovery Project, which was all about really finding new talent. And the plan was to do a management thing with it, but never really happened. But it exposed me to just like getting to work with Pasquale, getting to work with Insomniac, like even just further and further into the EDM scene, really at like the highest level. Yeah, right in the middle of all of it. Like literally, it was so cool. Very blessed to have had that experience. At the same time, around that time too, I met the owners of Icon, and they were like, "Hey, you're working in the music business, and we have a music business class, and you're doing this shit every day and probably know more about it than we do. Like, why don't you come in and start teaching this class?" So I came and started teaching, and that really shifted things for me, because I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with teaching. I loved being up in front of a classroom. I loved being able to really like sit down and just help people. It brought something to life inside of me that I had never really, I think, accessed before. And I found myself at a crossroads where Icon was then offering for me to come on board and work with them full time. And at the same time, I wasn't totally loving the situation that I was in. Like I was seeing, I think I really just fell in love with Icon. Like I just got so much more fulfillment. Like it was fun to do the big, like, the big flashy music business thing, but it was missing it was really missing like the soul. It was missing like the real art and the creativity. It was a bit more about like, let's throw big shows and let's make a ton of money and let's find the next act and let's blow them up. And for me, I grew up as an artist as well. So I've always been very connected to the music, very connected to the creative process. Mm-hmm. So getting to work in like a studio environment where it was really about more the creation of the music and really fostering that, I just fell in love with that way more. So I decided to go with Icon, and I was there for 7 years. Yeah, and that's where we met.
And that's where we met. So some more backstory on this. I was approached by a friend, Leo Corson, who at the time was at Circle Talent Agency, because I've always been a beneficiary of education of the music business. I mean, I began as a very ignorant drummer, and I got a lot of influence from great mentors. And I've always just kind of loved that environment of just hunger, right? Just hungry people. And I started bouncing around in LA, looking for a place to kind of apply that. And then when I found Icon, I know what you mean, dude. It was just like an instant, like, hello, this is the vibe. It's the vibe. It's just completely the vibe. Everyone here from Icon can attest that. Yeah. It's definitely that vibe.
It's special.
But what's interesting is I think, like you, they brought me in for music business, and I had to audit classes. And I audited one of your classes called The Art of Flow, and I want to begin the conversation there. Talk a bit more about what that class was, because even though I was auditing that class, I wasn't. I was a student of that class, and I really, really appreciated it. Tell us a bit about what that class was about and some of the principles and what kind of transitioned into that in terms of the creative resilience.
Yeah, the Art of Flow is Icon's secret sauce. It is a class that it really explores creativity, and through the intersection of psychology, spirituality, philosophy, pulls from all these different areas to explore this very complicated and almost mystic subject of creativity. Like, what the hell is creativity, right? In the first place. And so it's a class where we really attempt to understand that. We attempt to explain that. We give a lot of really cool tools and resources for how to just get more in tune with your creative flow. I think most artists have had that experience where making music becomes effortless. It's like you get struck with that lightning bolt where it's just like the ideas are coming through you and you can't even get them out fast enough. And those moments are so powerful. They're so special. And they're also so rare for most people. And we find ourselves craving that and chasing that. How did that happen? How do I get back to that? So the whole class is really like, how do you actually make that part like the norm, right? How do you actually really create from that space, most of the time, if not all of the time.
Mm-hmm. And just from the amount of years you spend teaching that class, I'd imagine the curriculum of that is just built into your brain now at this point. And you've heard so many questions, of course, along the way. Like, I mean, bottling lightning is an expression for a reason, but when it comes to brewing the lightning itself, can you share any quick insights in terms of what are some best practices to ensure that you have more opportunities to bottle that lightning?
Yeah. I think the conversation, it really starts with understanding the difference between the head and the heart, right? The mind, the ego, and the soul. Like we listen to music, we connect with music because it makes us feel something, right? It's not because it makes us think something. We don't have this like intellectual stimulation when we're listening to music. Like the best music, it hits you in the gut, and it's just like, damn, it creates like emotion and it creates feeling. So if you want to create that kind of music, you have to create music from that place within yourself. So learning how to access that place within yourself, which really means how to get out of your head, because we live so much in our head, right? We're thinking so much and we're trying to like figure out music. We're trying to crack the code. We're trying to understand the formula. That's what I call the math and science of making music, which is very important. And that's why all the other classes at Icon teach that part of it. But then this other part of it is like, how do you get out of the head and actually into the heart, you know? And so that really begins with, I think a big part of it is like letting go of what other people are doing. Like we pay so much attention to like, what are other people making, right? And that's in the business. What are they doing in business? What are they doing in music? And we're trying to study it all the time.
Especially nowadays when everyone else's success is in our face every single day.
Yeah, exactly. So part of it is like, okay, let me like tune that out. Let me block off the outside world and let me tune into my inside world, right? And let me move from the head into the heart, into the soul. The other big part of it is it's like, it really is about following the inspiration in the moment, right? The inspiration happens now. It doesn't happen in the future. It doesn't happen in the past. So it's like really the best question to ask yourself is like, what wants to come out of me right now? Right? What's there? I feel like there's the inspiration is always there, but you have to turn off the head. You have to silence the voice and really get into like, you know, inside of you, what wants to come out of me right now, or what wants to come through me right now in this moment. And that means you're not thinking about where's this track going? Who's it going to get signed to? How am I going to market it? You know, you're not thinking about the end result. You're getting super connected to the present. And the thing is, what might want to come out could be some really weird shit. It could be some like something that's like, this does not make sense for where I'm trying to go, where I'm trying to take it. And most people don't really have, really don't have the courage to actually just trust that. Just trust it and listen to it. Like this might take you way off the deep end into some weird territory that's totally unknown and unexplored. So we have to have the courage to actually listen to that, to be okay with kind of being lost.
And probably give yourself the window of time to sit and marinate with that. You know, like one mistake I often make, but I'm getting better at, is the idea of like scheduling studio time for myself. Like, all right, between 6 and 8, I'm going to be here and do creative things. It doesn't always kind of work that way though. You know, sometimes I find myself just getting way too analytical. But to that point, Nick, you know, the idea that you can't think it, you got to feel it. I recently kind of experienced that. And I'll just be quick on the anecdote here. But, you know, for after I've had some releases come out, I've kind of asked myself, which many of us ask, what's next? What should I do next? How should I evolve it now? Beyond just like whatever I'm feeling like with my fingers and playing along. But one exercise that I had that I've been doing almost unintentionally the past couple of days is I've kind of gone back to the well of the source of like when I was most inspired when I was a kid to make it in music, or I used to do something in music. So what I've done is like I've gone back and watched like biographies on artists that really inspired me when I was a kid. Like for instance, surprisingly to many people, I was really inspired by Marilyn Manson. And last night I went on a bender, just looking up all his recent interviews and old interviews. And just, you know, I've gone on Spotify and just like curated a playlist of just those 90s hits that always really spoke to me, including some of those tracks and artists that I never really like, they weren't that popular, but that really, really fucking spoke to me for whatever reason. And I just kind of gone back to that well. And, you know, of course, music is a great timekeeper in terms of emotions. It's a great way to kind of hold your emotions in place, right? So as I'm really going through this bender and kind of watching videos, I watched like the Verve Bittersweet Symphony video. I haven't seen that since I was a kid. You know, I'm just kind of watching that like, dude, I remember watching this being like, I want to do music. I want to do music. I want to do music. And just something about getting those synapses firing of like, hey, remember that kid? He's still here. Like you still want to do that. And now this morning I woke up and ran to my piano. Something about the overnight experience, right? When I went to sleep, my brain kind of processed all that and it filled me up with just, I'm just going to call it blanket inspiration. I don't have a direction creatively, but I have this idea that like, I just want to come here and just start writing now, and stuff's coming out that's a little darker than I've been making lately, but I'm rolling with that. You know, as of this conversation, I'm just going to keep rolling with that. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that kind of process.
Well, yeah. Marilyn Manson will do that to you. Dark stuff is going to come out. That's a guarantee. I just on that note real quick, I love that idea of revisiting the inspiration. Over at Icon, I think it was Valente. I don't remember exactly, but one of the students told me about an exercise that he had them do, which was to go back and make a playlist of all the songs that inspired you throughout your life, right? Like go back to like when the first song that you knew that really made you fall in love with music, and kind of work your way up from there. So it's to do like 20 songs or 25 songs. So I have a playlist on my Spotify as well. That's like the 25 songs of my life. And it's like from, 10 years old, from when I fell in love with music all the way up until today. And that was such a fun process to go through, to like revisit just these old bands and like, dude, who are you rocking out to in 5th grade? That like you just had their poster on your wall.
Like I remember I put on Enter Sandman, and I haven't played that song in a long time because I'm over the song. I know it to death. I've heard it so many times. I think I broke the tape. That's how much I listened to it. So I actually haven't really listened to that song, Metallica's Enter Sandman, in years. But I kind of went through the process, like, you know what? Let's just put it on. And dude, I was like screaming the lyrics in my car. I was like, I forgot how much I would literally bang my head against the pillow listening to this. And then I played it again as like 32-year-old Hisham. I'm like, oh, so they pan the drums to the right during the bridge. Oh, how interesting. And then you start like appreciating these new techniques that now as an adult. And it kind of brings a whole new appreciation. And now I'm like just mega inspired to get back in this room again. So it's very interesting to revisit that.
Metallica is a great example. I literally on a coaching call yesterday, we just got into had this really cool Metallica metaphor with him. They're such a great example of a band who, has obviously evolved in a lot of ways, but like at the time, the Black Album, Enter Sandman, it was like the biggest song and album and band in the world, like by far. This was in the heyday of like arena, rock bands. And I love hearing you talk about feeling that aggression and screaming the songs. I mean, that's not coming from the brain. That's coming from the heart. It's coming from the soul. And we see this a lot of times with bands of like when they're young, they're aggressive. They're making music with passion. They're not thinking about what they're making. They're just making it from the fucking heart. And, rock and metal is such a cool, genre because of that. But it's funny to kind of look at like with Metallica, what happened, is like they kind of lost some of that as they got older. It was like, okay, well now you're rock stars. You're, totally just like balling out. You have like more money, than you could ever do anything with. Like who they were changed. And we totally saw that reflected in, in the music. They cut off all their hair. Shit started getting really watered down again. And a lot of people like, didn't like them for that. But it was just, it's really, I think what happened if you watch I think what happened if you watch the Some Kind of Monster documentary was it was kind of like they started thinking too much. It was like we had been so successful before. They had been so successful with the Black Album that they felt this expectation to follow up to it. So they started thinking, how do we follow up to this? And they started making music from their mind. And like, it's a great documentary for all you guys should watch, Some Kind of Monster, or I think that's what it's called. Yeah. Some Kind of Monster. But it's like, you could see how they were just so in their head and they weren't making music from the heart anymore. A great example.
And something else they did that I want to kind of bring up now actually is that they got help on that album, right? Like they were very much like a speed metal, like hardcore band in that regard. And then with the Black Album, they got some production help. One thing that Icon did, and we're going to bounce from that topic shortly, it was the collab project that I've always been a fan of. Can you just speak a little bit more to the power of collaboration? I mean, and also things to look for in order to evolve the sound, let's just say like a Metallica did, but also how that could lead toward just more long-term growth and overall collaboration down the road.
Oh yeah. Collaboration it's just so necessary. And I think a lot of producers, like bedroom producers, as we would call them, we kind of have this idea that we have to do it all on our own. And it's actually it's a very sort of like, I think, outdated and detrimental idea. There is something special to be said about like solitude, right? Like meditate, turn within, find that inspiration inside. There is something that only you can make. At the same time, if you look at the greatest music in the world, none of it was made by one person, rarely, right? And to get it out there and to actually have it be successful, it really does require it requires a team. It requires collaboration on the business side and oftentimes on the creative side. Something that I see a lot is actually people's ego getting in the way, thinking that like, I have to do this all myself because this is my thing. and they hit a block, they hit a ceiling, and are unwilling to get help, unwilling to open themselves up to collaboration. Like someone else might be able to do this particular, part better than you can. Like bring them in, you don't have to do everything by yourself. For me personally, just as an artist, I grew up playing drums and played in a band. So for me, like I can make music by myself, but I love it so much more with other people, right? There's something super special about connecting the energy, right? When my energy is vibed with somebody else, and it doesn't happen with everybody. It's like sometimes your frequency is just not the same as someone else's. So you got to find who are the people that you really vibe with, that you really connect with, and I kind of want to bring when you find that, it's so special.
And I want to bring that into 2020, because the way I kind of look at it here is, at least for me, like when you collaborate with someone on any kind of level, I look at it almost like chemicals, just kind of mixing. And then once I've been in a room or a creative space, I guess you can say, with this chemical, eventually part of it's going to like latch onto my chemical, and it's just, part of them is going to come on, it's going to like bleed into me, And I say this because I started off in bands, kind of like you, Nick. I think a lot of people are starting off now just getting a dog, getting a synth, and just going at it, right? And I'm very thankful, frankly, that I kind of grew up in an age before DAWs and that kind of stuff was so accessible, because I had to be in a band, and I was a drummer too. And by being in a room every day with my band, and I was in many bands, by the way, but when the band would just play, literally they're bleeding on to me, and I'm absorbing that person's sense for melody, that person's keyboard technique a little bit, like that person, like they love to flutter things, that person's groove for bass, and me being just like rhythmically inclined, I just played by feel. I couldn't read music at the time or anything, so I just kept absorbing this onslaught of feel that now I'm applying to production. I can't really produce as well as I can play drums. I know that because I can speak fluently playing the drums. Production, I'm kind of like, whatever. But I think that part, I'm a little worried. This is like the old man in me now. I'm a little worried that part is starting to get lost a little bit. So when it comes to people being producers, is there a way for them to kind of think of themselves like, instrumentalists, like per se, and collaborate with many other people and kind of get some of that chemical mixture and absorption in nowadays?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it starts with, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself, the old definition of a producer was someone that was kind of behind the scenes, that took all the musicians and everybody and was almost like the conductor that brought them all together to make amazing art, right? And now there's this new definition of a producer. Technology has led us to this point that like, I can do it all myself. I have this amazing computer with like every single sound I could possibly need, so I can do it by myself. And a lot of people do, and that's great. Just because you can doesn't mean that you have to.
No, completely agreed. Completely agreed. So, but let's fast forward to today. You are now obviously out of Icon, and your realm now extends beyond the music business. So I kind of want to, of course, there's a parallel. We know, of course, there's a parallel here. But now you're a certified life coach. Talk a bit more about that transition that led you there, Nick, briefly, and then just talk about how that kind of leads to your broader mission of beyond the music business now.
Yeah, for sure. I think I really got into the personal development stuff right out of college, and just started, reading books and getting exposed to information that they don't teach you in school, that was helping me way more than anything I had ever learned in school, and really started soaking that up. And I just naturally had become, the kind of person that was always out there trying to, help people and find solutions to problems. And, I had the idea of coaching for a while. I was eventually discovered like, hey, there is a career and a profession for this type of work. And it was really at Icon that it really started to happen, because people came up and started asking me to mentor them. And I'm not a producer. I mean, I can produce, but like, I'm not a producer. I cannot mentor anybody in music production. But really they were coming to me for life. They were coming to me for the non-technical stuff, the mental stuff, the inspiration, the motivation, the creativity. And that's when I realized like, okay, there's, people are literally like coming up to me and asking me for it. So it's time for me to get over whatever fears I have and whatever, beliefs I had that I had to get over, and really just start serving, just start, just relentlessly helping people however I could. And, started kind of, building a bit of a practice out of that. But yeah, I went on to get certified, really just fell in love with the process, fell in love with coaching, fell in love with helping people get results. And yeah, went on to get certified, which was great. And then a year ago, just like went full time. I was just like, this is what I love. Very similar to my experience working at Capitol Records, where it was like, I was working in the music industry, but then I really fell in love with dance music. And I was like, hey, this is the thing that I really, really love. And in the same way, it was like, I was, as a manager, as a teacher, teaching all these different things. I eventually really found like, no, this is the part that I really love. This is the part that I'm good at and the thing that lights me up. So yeah, I really just went for it, and it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
I was going to say, let's talk about the health component. But before we do that, guys, I want to start loading up some questions. So if you're in the inclusive group here, not watching this on Facebook or something, please start typing in your questions now for Nik in the chat section. We're going to come to these shortly. But Nik, when it comes to just that mental health, I do want to kind of talk about that. So with physical health, I mean, there are obvious sort of things, of course, just exercise, eating right, plenty of sleep. I mean, the things that many of us don't do, but we should be doing on a more regular basis. Now, when it comes to the mental health in terms of creativity, are there any parallels? Are there any parallels that's something that you should do regularly, an exercise or ways to kind of feed the brain a bit more, or anything that you can start talking about that? Because I know you're obviously very active when it comes to physical fitness as well. So if there are any parallels there with mental fitness towards creativity, please share them.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you are the vessel for the creativity, right? So you need to take care of yourself in all ways. Like the better you are, it's like if you imagine you're like a drain. This is a horrible metaphor, but it's like if your drain is clogged, if it's filled up with shit, it's not going to have a good flow. Right. And so as an artist, you want to have a good flow. I want to be able to just like plug into the wall and get fucking electrocuted with creative inspiration and have that flow through me. So we really need to clear up all of that stuff that's inside of us. And there's really 4 components, right? You have your physical health, which I think is super important. And I think probably one of the most looked at part of life, or I guess one of the worst parts, I think, for a lot of producers that are like literally just like sitting in a chair, hunched over inside, not getting any sun, not really moving. So that's super important. You got to be moving, taking care of the physical health, mental health, as you said. You just emotional health and spiritual health too. There should be a conversation around that. They all work together. It's like we really have to be focusing on all 4, and they all contribute to each other. An improvement in one area is going to make an improvement in the other, and in all of the others. And then all of that helps you to just become, the best person that you can be. And then you're going to make the best music that you can make. To answer your question, more specifically, I love the physical health side of things. And for me, I've been really kind of developing this theory and seeing a lot of parallels around how to take care of your physical health, and also how that really parallels taking care of your mental health. And most people know for physical health, it's all about sleep, diet, and exercise, right? You need to get good rest, you need to eat good food, and you need to move. And in the very same way, I think mental health, there's this really kind of like interesting similarity. If we look at mental health as having sleep, diet, and exercise, right? So sleep, I think, is meditation. That's like actually just allow the chaotic mental chatter of your mind to go to sleep, right? And so that's meditation. There's a reason that hundreds of thousands of people meditate, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. It works, right? It's a really, really good, healthy practice. There's so many different ways that you can do it. There's apps, there's guided meditations. So I think meditation is great. I do like 20 minutes of just sitting meditation in the morning. So sleep, diet is the big one. Like, what are you consuming? This is the big one. We're all addicted to content. We're all addicted to our phones. Like, just fucking admit it. We are. It's a very real thing. Now, this is like what we're putting into our body, right? The difference between waking up every day, slamming a coffee, eating a big ass donut, having fucking Jack in the Box for lunch, and expecting to physically feel good or to physically perform well, it's not going to work. Like, we know that, right? So at the same time, consuming content, like reading the news every day, watching, just dumb shit on Facebook, or getting involved in people's drama on Facebook, watching videos, watching things that ultimately don't really like inspire you and make you feel good, which is oftentimes some of the most addictive stuff, right? Like the Jack in the Box tastes the best, but it's the worst for you.
Totally.
A lot of that stuff that really sucks us in is actually the worst stuff for us. So I think consuming content is great. I think feeding yourself, right? But, make that switch to reading books, listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, watching, educational stuff or inspirational stuff on YouTube. Like, yeah, that's your food that you're putting into your brain. And that's going to make, honestly, the biggest difference. Because I think we're just consuming so much. Yeah.
Do you think we may have romanticized that idea of poor health when it comes to music, right? I mean, we kind of grew up with this idea that the rock stars drink themselves silly, they're doing drugs all night, or like I had friends that they would purposely be a mess and have garbage to be up all night. Like, I mean, part of me, I'm not going to lie, when I first started, I was like, maybe this I'm not cut out for this. I can't party all night. I can't do all these things, but of course, as I've gotten older, I see those have longevity, either grew out of that or never got into that. But do you think we've kind of romanticized this idea of fucking
totally
to do music?
Totally. There's there's this archetype of the painful artist of like, I write songs about the pain in my life, right? And my art comes from my pain. And if that's true, then in order to keep making art, you have to continue to have pain.
You gotta fuck yourself up, yeah.
And so it's like, you can do that, and you can, so much of the best music has been made from that. But also at the same time, let's look at how many really successful artists are truly fulfilled. How many of them are really happy? How many of them actually have successful relationships? How many of them are actually good parents, right? Like we see, people are fucking killing themselves, and to me, that's one of the big driving forces that I see, not just in art, not just in the artist world, but just in life in general, of how people can accomplish all of their goals, be incredibly successful, and be incredibly miserable. And to me, there's just something wrong with that. That equation doesn't add up. And so that's what I'm really dedicated to is understanding that and helping people through that, right? Like we should enjoy the fucking process. We should enjoy the journey of life, not just the results that we create during the journey. So yeah, it's completely over, romanticized, I think, in a lot of ways.
I like to agree with that. I'm going to ask Mr. Ryan Frizzle to ask his question because it actually blends into the next topic I want to get into. Of course, we all know this is beyond the music, right? Everything we do here is definitely beyond the music in order to get it out. I've heard many people say, well, does the painter paint for people to see his painting, or does he just paint? I've got my own feelings about that. But Frizzle had a question here that I wanted him to ask over video. So Mr. Frizzle, please go ahead and ask your question to Nick.
Yeah, how's it going, Nick?
What's up, bro? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. So yeah, I'm asking a question about wondering if you can talk about the balance between creating new music in projects, so getting that feeling out when you have a huge catalog at the same time. So that balance of executing a business plan that you wrote down where it might be some of those more monotonous tasks, but you feel like it'll move the needle forward versus getting that creativity out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because I think you're really great at balancing those two.
I think that if you don't get the creativity out, you are going to be creatively constipated. And that's not a situation any of us want to find ourselves in. Like, you need to get that shit out, right? And if that means putting the other stuff on hold, then like put it on hold, dude. Because you might have 20 tracks lined up and have a whole business plan, ready to go, but you also might be on the verge of creating the one track that's actually going to make any difference in your career. And if you say no to following that inspiration, you're really screwing yourself over. So if you really have that inspiration that wants to come out, those ideas want to come out, it's kind of your duty to surrender to that.
Mm-hmm. Did anyone actually want to chime in with that? I'm going to open up a little bit. If someone wants to chime in and elaborate, if anyone has their own experience.
Thanks, Nick.
Does anyone want to chime in?
I can share something, Chad.
Yes, please. Mr. James Gutman, coming from Amsterdam.
Yeah, thanks a ton for doing this, Nick. This is awesome. I just wanted to share too. I think that there can be a lot of overlap in those two things. Like, I think that executing on, marketing plans, business goals, all that kind of stuff, there's a way to sort of tap into that like creative juice in doing that stuff as well. That's something I've definitely been trying to do more of lately, is like take that same, flow hype feeling when you're working on a new tune, and it's just like writing itself, and try to find ways to apply that to those more like typically less exciting parts of the career. So hopefully that can inspire you a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great point. Something I talk about a lot is creativity is not limited to making music. That you see yourself as a creative, not just as an artist, as in someone that just creates art, but when you really see yourself as being a creative, then that means that you are a creative person. You create things and you have this creative energy that has multiple outlets to put it into. So oftentimes we look at, we think that art and music, this is where I get to be creative, not realizing that your business is also a creative outlet as well. That same creativity that you're putting into your music, put that shit into your business. And when you figure that out, like it can, a lot of us have this belief that it's like the work, the business side is the work. It's the boring stuff. It's the hard stuff. But once you start to change that belief and start to see it as this is also a creative activity, it might take a little while, but figure out where you can find the fun, where you can find, as you said, the hype and the flow. And it starts to become a creative process rather than, an uphill battle of doing work.
Not to mention, the more times you do things, not only the better and easier they become, but the quicker you get through them, I like to think, especially like when it comes to the more quote unquote mundane tasks here. But another thing I'll just add to that is because, look, you might walk away from this conversation inspired, motivated, whatever, wanting to give more time into that business side as well. But man, oh man, I can't stress the importance of patience when it comes to that. Because when you have like the immediate feedback loop, look, if you're already established and you post a track on YouTube and then within an hour, there's 3,000 views and 40 comments, you're like, oh, I want to keep doing more of this. But in the beginning, when you have relatively low traction, I understand when you may not have that same sort of, that oomph that kind of pushing you forward. But when it comes to just the longevity, the perspective of things like when you have a new track, updating your website, getting all the video assets together, getting as much distribution as possible, you just don't understand the long-term ramifications that can have when someone finally does decide to discover you and check out your stuff to make sure you have your stuff together, or maybe want to collaborate with you or something else down the road. But I mean, it's part of keeping the faith, I guess you can say. But just understand that what you're doing now may not exactly resonate in that moment, but it echoes, and you're going to thank yourself down the road when you do those things as well. James also actually had a question for you, Nick, when it comes to books and reading material. Can you share your top 2 or 3 self-development books, maybe 1 or 2 that are super applicable to artists specifically?
Oh yeah, when it comes to the artist world, I think the first must read is The War of Art. He talks about resistance. We all have resistance. It's like, I know I want to make music. I know I want to create something amazing, but then there's just this internal resistance to it. And he really dives into that. It's a great book. It's very short, quick read, one that you can come back to, and it just kind of lights a fire under your ass. So if you need that sort of push and motivation just to fight through the resistance, a really, really great book. The other big one is The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way is a really interesting book because it's not one that you're just going to read, flip through and just kind of read straight through. It's actually a workbook. So it's a 12-week workbook. You really need to dedicate yourself, for 3 months to do the exercises. This is, it's incredible. Julia Cameron, the author, she's the one that really pretty much invented the morning pages where you wake up and she has, the 2 things she has you do is you wake up and you write 3 pages of just stream of consciousness, free flow thought every morning. And then you also take yourself on an artist date every week as well. Really cool exercises. So it's super hands-on. So yeah, much more than a book. It's actually more of like a program, but that's a game changer because it just ups your creative flow in such a big way. Those are the 2. I would give those, those 2 as must reads for artists for sure.
Love it. And if you have others, by the way, that you guys know of, please put them in the chat section for us to check out. I'm sure you guys all have your own recommendations as well. Tomas, you had a question, birthday boy, when it comes to the daily, weekly practices, but I'll give you the floor now just to go ahead and ask it to Nick in person.
Cool. What's up, Nick? Good to see you.
Yo, you too, man.
Yeah, the question was just, what have you found to be your favorite practices? I think a lot of mental health stuff that I've learned about comes down to a practice. So doing something consistently. So what are some good daily practices and then maybe weekly or monthly practices that you found?
Yeah, just to continue with that sort of metaphor that I was describing earlier, the practice, if you think about your physical health, it's like, the exercise is something that you got to do every day, or you got to do a couple times a week. It's something that you do regularly. You don't just go to the gym once a month and expect to have a great body, expect to feel good. It doesn't work that way. It is a practice. It's something that you show up and you do every day. So the practices, like I think, like I was saying before, for me, a really big one is journaling. I think in terms of my mental health, I would say journaling has been the number one. Like meditation is amazing. I've personally been, haven't been super consistent with it. Like I'm not like a crazy hardcore, meditator. And that's another really, really good practice. But journaling for sure has made the biggest difference. Just being able to sit down with your thoughts, right? Like if we're talking about mental health, it's all about what's happening in your mind. Your journal is the best $1 therapist that you'll ever have, to just pour your thoughts onto paper. A lot of times when we're feeling bad or mentally unhealthy, it's because we just have so many thoughts in our head and they're circulating and they're kind of, just polluting the environment, and we're not making sense of them. And those thoughts turns into emotions, because that's where we really feel it, right? And we start having anxiety, we start having depression, we start having things that we literally feel in our body, but it's all stemming from what's happening in our mind. And so to have an outlet where you can just pour those thoughts out and just be like, hey, like this is what's happening. Let me just take this thought and put it on paper. Just the simple act of that, I think, one, it releases some of the energy. If it's like these thoughts are just ruminating and they're getting built up, that just the act of putting it on paper allows it to release some of that energetic buildup. And also you'll really oftentimes really figure out the solutions. You like start writing about your problems, and then your mind also automatically works on the solutions. It's really hard to just do that in your head. I compare it to like being like a ping pong ball. So oftentimes our thoughts are just going back and forth, but when you put it on paper, you can actually look at your thoughts, and then your mind will automatically start to come up with solutions for that as well. So journaling is just a game changer. If that's one thing that you start doing, like I think that can be, like make that a daily practice. Like that's like going to the gym every day. Like you will get stronger, you will get mentally stronger, you will experience some incredible results doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. At least for me, like, I mean, meditation, for some people, it still sounds kind of like hippy dippy, man, new age, man. I don't know, man. But, sometimes just silence, sitting in silence can be enough. I will say, Nick, to your point, for me anyway, if I sit in silence, or some of those days I'll meditate or something, it kind of like softens up my brain a little bit. Because if I just go straight to journaling, it's like, I don't know what to do, like there's just too many things like in my brain. I'll just start free writing nonsense. Eventually something will happen. But I noticed if I meditate, dude, even for like 5 minutes, I just kind of sit there and have some ambient music and just get pretty emotional. Of course, something's going to come in my brain, that email I got to get to, but just let it do its thing. And then I start getting the journal, and there's, Nick, you're absolutely right, because in your brain, it's like, there is no kind of like organizational development, is there? Just kind of like bloop, 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 bloop. But like when I have like a journal thing there, it's like, all right, bullet point. Why am I so concerned about this shit? Why does this kind of matter to me? And eventually I'll start having a legit conversation with myself. Like, I didn't realize that mattered to me so much. Or like, I'll start getting a little more strategic. And then, at least for me, after my journaling, I go to my to-do list. And wouldn't you know it, that a lot of my to-do list is formulated from all the organization of my brain every day. And man, I like to think, I wish we could just be better in terms of our brains being more hyper functioning, because I got to do that every day. It doesn't just work like one time and you're good for the week. I almost got to work on that shit every single day. So yeah.
And just a note on meditation as well. There's this misconception that meditation means like sitting there in the lotus position with your eyes closed, lighting incense. It's like, there are hundreds of ways to meditate, if not thousands. And so you can make meditation be whatever it is for you. Like meditation, there's walking meditation. You can wake up and go take a walk. And it's just, really all it is like being in the moment, any kind of practice that brings you into the moment. So for those of you that maybe have been, kind of scared of meditation, or you've tried the typical sort of technique and it hasn't really worked, open yourself up to what it could look like. It could be totally different. As you said, it could just be sitting on the couch, not even with your eyes closed, and just listen to like an inspiring song. Like that is a way to meditate, just to bring yourself into the moment.
What are your thoughts on activity-based meditation, Nick? I mean, some people say that, like you mentioned walking, but other forms of activity? I mean, one time I told someone when I go surfing, it's like meditating because I'm in the moment. But is it meditating? So I just want your thoughts on that.
I mean, that's why I go to the gym. That's why I've always gone to the gym. It was like, it's not because I'm trying to, be in like a fucking men's calendar or something. It's because I go there to meditate. I go there to like have that moment with myself, to really bring myself into the moment. Because that's really what it is. To be honest, listening to music, experiencing music, dancing, it really is a form of meditation. If we look at meditation from the perspective of anything that brings you into the moment, right? Anything that brings you into your body, because we're living in our head all the time, right? And this is where we create all of our problems. So, meditating is so powerful because it brings you into your body and it brings you into the moment. So I think anything that does that is a great example of meditation. It could be rock climbing, it could be surfing, it could be skateboarding, right? Where you're not thinking about, shit, I got to go do this later on, or damn, that thing happened yesterday and it's really bothering me. It's like you're in the moment. So anything that brings you there, I think, could be considered meditation.
Yeah. And this being our present day, there's an app for that. So there are apps, of course, like Headspace, Calm. Check those out for guided meditation. Here we have a question from Daniel Steele. When it comes to the life coaching component, that's a great transition point, Nick, because I do want to talk more about what you're doing now with different people. So Daniel, I'll give you the floor now to go ask your question to Nick.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering what it consists of to have you as a life coach, because I know a lot of the most successful people in the world have different mentors. Now, I don't know if you have like a specific program that you've developed, or it kind of varies from person to person. So I was just wondering if you could go over what it's like.
Yeah, great question. At this point, I am just doing one-on-one coaching. So, I don't have a program. It's not that you sign up and there's 12 weeks and week 1 we do this and week 2 we do that. It purely is based on the client. What are you going through right now? What are your challenges? What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? It's actually not even about me. It's all about you. It's all about, I just hold the space. I ask questions. I take different approaches for different people. Some people, they want like the sports coach. They want the guy that's going to get in there and just fucking yell and be like, yo, did you get your shit done? Let's go. Right. And they want that kind of energy. And I love that. I can bring that, at the same time, there's especially I love working with artists where we, recently I've been really getting into like guided visualizations with people, where it's like, hey, let's go explore some internal subconscious world and like, let's take you there. So it's really about the client and kind of what they want, what they're looking for. I'm just sort of the container that holds the space that allows, that doesn't necessarily give you the answers, but I give you the questions to have you discover the answers on your own.
Very cool. And Nick, I know everyone has their own starting point when it comes to that, right? But I'd imagine a lot of it is people getting in their own way when it comes to certain growth elements. Can you just speak a bit more about that, of some common pitfalls you might have seen so far?
Oh man, everything. One of the ones that I've been encountering more and more that I've been seeing often is our drive to be a machine. Like we want to just strive for perfection, for maximum efficiency. I want to wake up and just fucking kick ass all day and get all of these things done. And we have this huge, expectation of what we're supposed to be accomplishing. And so people oftentimes come to me being like, hey, I want to be more productive. I want to create more results. I want to go do this. And actually, trying to move more into that direction actually pulls you further away from it. So a lot of the work that I've been doing recently is more like, hey, let's get in touch with just being human, because we're humans. We're not machines. And there's a balance there. It's like, it's like that. There is that masculine energy of like the drive and the effectiveness and the results, but there's also this feminine energy of just like of flow and the sort of natural growth and the natural alignment with our, with this other kind of energy that's there. So that's been a big one recently.
Where do you think that comes from? Why do you think so many of us have that? Like, if I'm not having output or producing something, not music, but just producing something that, I'm fucking up. Like, where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think there's like a there's just this social, we live in a capitalistic society where our value is placed on what do we produce, right? How much money do you make? What kind of car do you drive? Like, what are you doing with your life? What do you have to show for it? There's this sort of societal programming, and on top of that, I mean, a further, sort of division of that. I just had a good call last night with one of my really good friends who's a female coach, and she works a lot with, with women around like body image issues, self-love and body image issues. And then we had this really like kind of profound realization, because I'm talking to her, I work with a lot of guys, girls too, but like predominantly guys. And it does seem to be more of a male thing, that it's like, on a social level, women are oftentimes programmed that their value comes from beauty, right? What do you look like? And so there's a lot of issues around that, right? There's a lot of issues around self-love, a lot of issues around body image that she sees come up with her female clients. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because, for me, I'm working with all these guys. We're very socially programmed to believe that our value comes in from, what do we produce? How much money do we make? Are we able to provide, for the family, kind of a thing. So that, I don't know, that's just kind of a fresh idea that's really on my mind, but yeah. It's just social programming.
And it's also perspective. I mean, look, especially in this, the capitalistic society that many of us have jobs, and look, if you get a job, it's like, all right, 9 to 5, output. And of course, we've all been there, right? Where it's like, I have a meeting at 1 o'clock. I'm productive. But how many times have those meetings been bullshit? Or how much time you just spend doing fucking virtually nothing or repeated kind of stuff, though? But that being said, when you're in an office environment, you think, well, I'm earning my money, right? I'm here. I'm giving them my time. We don't work that way. Obviously, we don't work as artists that way. So I can understand that, like, some days I'll be in here and I'll just write something and I'll record things, but nothing comes out. Do you want to save the session? No, I don't. And sometimes I'll be like, well, fuck, did I really do anything today? Did I move the needle forward? Well, tangibly, maybe not, but like, I think I improved my left-hand technique a little bit. I maybe improved this, or at least I turned the stone over of adding, a really dark cave sounding reverb on the kick drum only. I wanted to experiment with that last night, and I did. It didn't work, but I did it. And to kind of bring those two worlds together, I recently got a gig providing music for an app product that I will talk about later when I can talk about it. And the guy who commissioned me to do it gave me just a month. You have a month to do it. That's it. There's no like between these hours, I need this. You have a month. And I'm thinking like, I mean, do I really need a month? I can really crank these out. I was able to crank them out pretty quickly, but I was like, I mean, I can crank that out like in a couple of days. But there's a reason why they understand. We'll give you a month to crank this stuff out, because we know you might go 2 days, 3 days without making any music, but is that necessarily unproductive? So again, curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the artist in the artist world, I think everybody that's on this call and everyone that's watching, it's like you've probably chosen to be an artist because you didn't want to participate in the other very, very, very structured sort of 9 to 5, like like industrial sort of society that we've been living in. So it's interesting, man. It's like once you decide to exit that system, then you are responsible for creating your own. And I think that you can take some of that with you. I think that structure and that discipline and having goals and having results, it does serve you very much. But especially when it comes to art, it's like there's that whole other, the passion, the emotion, the soul that is required for art that's not necessarily required to just kind of go to work and have a normal job in many cases. So it's just it's an interesting place to explore, and just sort of this cool ocean to swim in. And there's no right answer. That's the big thing, is like, just, you got to figure out what works for you. Take inspiration from other people, experiment a lot, but you're literally creating your own system. You're creating your own reality. And there's no rules to that. There's no boundaries to that. You just got to figure out like what works for you and what do you enjoy. Yeah.
I heard a technique, before we wrap this up here. I have not tried myself. I only heard it yesterday, but this is, I get the principles here. If you're having a hard time measuring your output when you're not producing anything per se, one tactic, and again, mold this to your own liking, was, okay, the person suggested during your working hours, whatever that is, it could be when you wake up, 9 o'clock till 5, if you want to go that route, or some of it, 4 to 2 a.m., whatever it might be. At the end of every hour, set an alert. And then, at that point, when the hour ends, you ask yourself, did what I do during this hour get me towards my goals? If it did, in your Google Calendar or whatever it is, put a green block for that hour. If not, put a red block. And then do that for maybe like a week or so. And then you'll get a bird's eye view of like, there's a lot of red there. Or hey, it's a lot of green. Even though I was in the studio just producing stuff, it's okay. Like it was a productive hour anyway. I've not done it yet, but I really like that kind of principle when it comes to measuring, was I really productive during this period of time?
I love that. Very cool.
Are there any kind of techniques, Nick, before we bounce out of here, that you do give your coaching clients when it comes to their personal productivity, or any kind of templates they may provide when it comes to just structuring their days or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't have any templates per se. I think it's good to really just get clear on like the result that you want to make. It's weird. There's this conversation around process and results, right? It's like, you really dedicate yourself to the process, so that like hour by hour, am I being productive? And at the end of the day, like, are you actually, sort of creating results? So yeah, to be honest, I don't know, man, I'm still kind of figuring that one out. It really is different for every person. So like, again, I think the big thing is just like, it's customizing it for yourself and for whatever works for you, which is, it's kind of different all across the board.
Yeah, man. And our final note here, as we wind this down here, Nick, obviously we're living in a weird time, a very strange time, not just for making music, but for anyone really. I just give us your overall kind of thoughts, your impressions. We're very deep into this pandemic now. It's matured for many of us. It's no longer this new weird thing. It's just this weird new normal now at this point. Any parting words that you could have for anyone who's in the middle of a career where maybe it's not as crystal clear as it once was down the road, or anything you can say when it comes to creativity in a weird pandemic time?
Yeah, the nature of life is change. The nature of life is evolution. We're going through change. We're going through an evolution, and there's always going to be stuff happening outside of yourself. There's always going to be stuff that's outside of your control. And I guess my message is to not get caught up in that, because there's this whole internal world as well. And that's where you're actually experiencing everything. You're experiencing it in your mind. You're experiencing it in your heart. Do the work to master that internal world. Make that internal world as much, what you want it to be. Because then no matter what is happening outside of you, you'll still be okay. And so I think we let what's happening outside of us affect the inside of us too much when we haven't really done that internal work. The stronger you make, yourself on the inside, the more results, the more powerful, the more creative you'll be able to be on the outside, and you'll really be able to be bulletproof to whatever happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you brought it up earlier, and you literally said it specifically, like checking the news every day, or like getting involved in people's drama, or seeing what's trending now, what viral video, what outrage people are having now, what collective outrage there is, which is very easy in a time when we're all just at home, like on the phone. Of course, it's a great time for the media cycle. That being said, I mean, what I would kind of tackle onto that is be informed as a citizen, right? Do what you got to do. It's an important time, especially for us Americans. But at the same time, do not let this shit consume you. I mean, these products are literally designed to consume us, especially when it comes to these heightened human emotions like outrage or public outcry or whatever it might be. But don't forget, there's a reason why Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all these other people didn't allow their kids to use their own tech products, because they knew the addictive nature of them. That being said, I really encourage you guys to keep what Nick said in terms of that brain food. Do you really want to have just like a French fry after French fry after French fry on outrage Twitter? Or maybe just, read what you got to, tune it out. Get the artist way going, get a podcast, get a TED Talk. Just, I think right now is more than ever is being cognizant of that brain food that we're putting into our brains, and not letting the craziness of the world really infect our internal world as artists. Yeah. That being said, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Please let everyone know how people can get in touch with you, what you're working on now for the coaching stuff, if you're taking on new clients, etc.
Yeah. Always looking for, new cool people to work with. I need to be inspired by you just as much as you need to be inspired by me. So, feel free to reach out if you are interested. You can add me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can email me, nikcherwink@gmail.com. Happy to connect. And definitely encourage you to, even just to mutually follow each other. Please reach out. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
So much, dude. That was rad.
Thanks for coming through.
Nick, again, thank you for your time. If you guys want to get in touch with him, he's at Nik_Cherwink, and reach out to him if you're interested in the life coaching stuff. And in the meantime, folks, thank you for joining us today for Creative Corner. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another guest. And in the meantime, drop us a line if you ever want to hit us up for anything, and be on the lookout for the next episode. Till then, adios, everyone.
Thanks, Sean.
Yes, guys.
Yeah.
Bye, Sean. Bye, Nick.
Thank you guys.
Yeah,
Have a great
Goodbye.
day.
Bye.
Yeah.